Hello everyone, that's just gone 1:30 now. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world at the moment. Great to see an audience through the registrations that we've had over the last few days for the webinar. Spread across multiple continents, which is great. There are still people arriving, so I'll give them a few minutes to log on. To make sure everyone can hear me okay, can you put a message in the chat box telling me where you are in the world and what time it is? So plenty of people here. Great, everyone's coming through. We've got, yeah, locally here in Aberdeen, Houston. Good morning, Diego. Duncan in Dubai, good to see you. Neil, how are you? Yeah, we've got more people coming through from the Middle East. Fraser, Mervyn, presume you're up in sunny Elgin at the moment. Right, guys. We've got people from all over UK, Europe, the Middle East, and the States logging in, which is fantastic. So, right, we'll crack on, guys. Let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Ingram. I founded Real Talent Matters in 2017. We're a search and recruitment firm that specialise in the energy sector and provide executive management and mid to senior tier operational and engineering appointments. Delighted today to have a guest. Dr Marc Roos joins us today to talk about this week's subject, which is sales incentive plans, a new approach. As I touched on in the last webinar, we have spent a lot of time in the last month talking to over 100 businesses and senior management within those companies to understand what the pain points are and what issues and impact that we're feeling through the COVID period. Out of those topics, we have guest speakers to try and address some of those issues. And I'm delighted to have Mark here today. So welcome, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you fine, Mark. I hope same for you.
Yes, super. A quick introduction to Mark, guys. So Dr Roos, as I'll give him his official title.
A long time ago.
Yeah, has been an HR practitioner in major extractive industry businesses in a variety of settings, including mining, engineering, and oil and gas. He's joined multi-billion projects in Siberia, Qatar, Mauritania, Cameroon, Iraq, the UAE, with more than 20 years of practical experience. During this period, he has literally covered all aspects of people management, including recruitment, comps and bends, L&D, payrolls, HRIS implementation, you name it, he's done it. And he's very well positioned to talk about the subject we're going to speak about today. So I'll hand the reins over to you, Mark. We can see the screen, no problem. So enjoy.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for this great introduction, Mark. And it's sort of the Mark and Mark show today. So sorry about that. So I'll try to talk a little bit about the sales incentive plans and an approach that I've been working on together with several other people over the past 6 months or so. So let me talk you through that process, and there's an opportunity for asking questions and for making comments later on, and Mark will introduce those points of opportunity. So just briefly, we should be going to the next slide, which is the agenda slide. Just going through to talk a little bit about the philosophy of sales and talking about lagging versus leading indicators, and we'll take safety as an example for that. And we're going to try to get to leading indicators in sales. What you see is what you measure is what you get. And we'll talk a little bit about that and how that relates, and go for the idea of restructuring the sales bonus process. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that? And then, as I said, an opportunity for conclusions and discussion for people to take. So let me just start off straight at the deep end with philosophy of sales. So sales is a hugely broad concept, yeah, where we are selling something to someone. This particular webinar is focused mainly on business-to-business sales processes, but there's an entire spectrum from transactional sales, pure transactional sales, where there is a well-defined commodity, and the only thing that you're really talking about is price. And we're talking about things like gold. Everybody knows what gold is. It's all, every bar of gold is exactly the same. Yeah, currency is the same. Every dollar is a dollar is a dollar, and you can trade the thing, but there's no real sales process involved. Yeah, and at the other end of the spectrum, yeah, you've got a truly interactive process where you're co-creating solutions with your client. Yeah, and the examples of this are for example, SAP or IBM, who are dug into their client and then co-creating specific bespoke solutions to the specific problems that that particular client has. And in between, there's all sorts of processes from that perspective. So the future of sales is going to move more and more away from transactional sales and from explanatory sales, because all of that transactional and that explanatory is going to move towards AI and towards the internet. Yeah, many of you who are in sales functions will realize that your clients are very well informed about the things that are going on in their industry, because everybody has the internet, everybody can read all the trade papers. Yeah, so information is not exclusive to the salesperson to present. Information is out there everywhere. So there's a lot, so the value of a salesperson in explaining something to a client becomes less and less, because the client can find itself out for themselves. So the sales process where there's humans involved is going to become more and more consultative, more and more looking at understanding your client, what their problems are and how those problems can be solved. So that requires a very robust, for any company, a very robust sales philosophy. So what is our sales philosophy as a company? Where are we on that spectrum? And to build a sales system and process to address that particular philosophy. Now, this seminar isn't about building that. Yeah, that's a separate discussion, perhaps with a sales expert. But this is the idea. So we're moving away from transactional and from explanatory, much more to consultative and solution-oriented. And typically, those processes are also take longer. So that's step one. And secondly, I wanted to set a bit of the scene on lagging versus leading indicators. So, and I'm using safety as an example, because many of us around the table will be familiar with the safety hazards and lagging versus leading indicators in the safety incident pyramid. Yeah, where we've been measuring as an industry, fatal injuries, lost time injuries, first aid injuries, and near misses, which are all lagging indicators of something that has happened. Yeah, and we're trying for safety to get into the leading indicators, which has been really hard work, into identifying hazards and much more recently into having safety conversations to get into leading indicators and measuring those. Yeah, and by getting much more measured and identified hazards and having the safety conversations with people, we should be reducing the incidence of the lagging indicators. And in many industries and many companies, you see that happening in practice. So, yeah. However, for sales, yeah, almost all sales incentive plans are based on actual sales achieved, which is 100% and exclusively a lagging indicator. There is no leading indicator to that at all. You've signed on the dotted line, bang, that's what you're measuring. It's a lagging indicator, something has happened. And the example I'm citing here, especially in business to business and large projects, those processes can take a long time. This particular example is from the Weir organization, where they've sold a big GDPR crusher. yeah, which is £100 million worth of fantastic sale, really brilliantly done in September of last year. Everybody happy. All the sales team gets a nice massive bonus in 2019. But the process of getting to that particular signed document has taken more than 5 years. And there are a number of people that have worked on that process in all of those leading indicators, in talking to clients, in making presentations, in designing and redesigning the proposal, that do not necessarily get to reap, yeah, because they're no longer with the company in some cases, of that particular final sales bonus, because we're only measuring that lagging indicator. So what we're trying to get to is measuring and thereby some of the leading indicators in the sales process, yeah, and on the assumption that you have a working sales system, yeah, all the pre-sale activities, all the activities that are happening prior to the contract being signed are leading indicators of a contract being signed. And typically you have many contacts and fewer prospects and still fewer presentations, and then a few tenders and quotations, and then final negotiations, and finally you end up with a sale. So there's a funnel process there. And theoretically, yeah, the bigger the top of your funnel, the more your sales are. Yeah, it's similar with the safety pyramid, yeah, which is the other way around. The broader the base of your pyramid, the narrower and the fewer your fatalities are going to be. So a customer relationship management system will help structure this. Now, I'm not here to sell CRM systems, and there are dozens of systems in the market. And in fact, you can run a reasonable CRM system for a small business just on an Excel spreadsheet. So this is certainly not a requirement to buy a very expensive CRM system. This one happens to be an example from Salesforce. These are not real people. This is the Salesforce sales document. So this is just a specific example that Salesforce produces for their own sales process. But what you can see on the left is that you're seeing the sales funnel and the whole process and the various different amounts that are in there. And on the bottom, you can see all the various salespersons and where their activities have been in the period that is being reported on. And so by getting this kind of, you can see, yeah, and get an idea of what your sales funnel is, and you can get an idea of how much, what your win percentage is over time. And you can get an idea of which particular salesperson is doing which things and in which phases they are. Are they doing more prospecting, or are they doing more negotiations? Yeah, and if they're fully concentrating on negotiations, perhaps you should be directing that person to do more prospecting, because yeah, their personal funnel is going to dry up. One of the other things that you can try to identify from having information like this is the idea of which of your sales personnel are more oriented towards hunting than farming. And there's a concept within sales as being hunters and farmers. Yeah, and typical job titles associated with that kind of strength is farmers tend to be things like key account managers, for example, and hunters tend to be business development managers. So where you have an existing client and you need to continue to work that client to get more business out of them, yeah, or renew business out of them, that's sort of farming activity. So you've got somebody who's managing a field and trying to get more production out of that. It's a particular strength that some people have more of. Hunting, yeah, is the people that go out in the forest and go and find new clients, yeah, into the wild, and that stimulates them, and it's great for them. And as I say, there's no hard and fast rule, but your average salesperson will have more of a strength lying in one side or the other. And putting somebody who has a strength in farming, yeah, and putting them on a hunting assignment, they'll just get lost in the forest and won't get you anything. Yeah, vice versa, taking somebody who has strength in hunting and putting them on a farmed account, they will get bored and tired and they will run away. So by understanding what those strengths are, you can deploy people to better effect within that within that process. So then we get to the real nub of this is WYSIWYG, and some of you may be old enough to remember WYSIWYG when computers ended up being able to print what you actually see on the screen, as opposed to previously where what you saw on the screen bore no relation to what came out of the printer. Yeah, and from this the acronym WYSIWYG was born, which is what you measure is what you get. And in many organizations, they have a good handle on this, especially with KPIs and balanced scorecards and so on and so forth. It all grew out of this idea, is if you're measuring something, that's what you get, what you're going to get. And Peter Drucker put it very succinctly. He says, if you can't measure something, you can't improve it. Because even if you are doing lots of activities to try and improve it, how do you know whether the activities that you're doing are actually doing anything better or anything worse? So you must measure something in order to be able to improve it. And so the challenge we have in the sales process is to ensure that your sales team members input accurate, complete, and up-to-date, especially up-to-date, pre-sales data, so your leading indicators data, into whatever system it is that you're using. And that's, yeah, because if you've got no data, yeah, you're not measuring it, and therefore you can't improve it. Yeah, because that's an important concept. So the corollary of all of this, yeah, is to come down to restructure the sales incentive bonus to give some incentive for the timely data entry of those leading indicators. Either, for example, by putting in monthly or quarterly leading indicator process bonuses, yeah, against whatever targets there are. And I'm not saying, yeah, put the whole bonus based on that, because we still need to generate the sale as a company in order to be economically viable. And you can normalize these sorts of activities by the size of the order. Yeah, somebody who's working really hard on one particular really big order, yeah, should get a similar reward as somebody who's working really hard on a dozen small orders, for example, to get some sort of normalization going. Yeah, and you could also partly or completely make your sales bonus payout contingent on hitting those process targets. That's more of a stick approach. Yeah, so by getting a sale, and you look at the actual sale and the sales bonus that hangs on that, and looking backwards and saying, have all of the leading indicator processes been properly filled in for this and for the ones that you missed? And if not, to punish that person for not doing that. Yeah, my recommendation generally is to go with the reward rather than with the punishment, because human psychology teaches us that it's better to go with rewards than it is with punishment. Okay, so Mark, I think you wanted to have a word at this point.
Yes, just a quick question, guys. Can everyone hear the recording okay? I have had some problems with the volume. I don't know if it's I'm getting a crackling at my end every now and then. Can everyone hear Mark okay? Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah, okay. The problem, thankfully, seems to only be at my end, Mark, which is great.
Great.
Everyone can hear you fine.
Thanks for
Has anyone got any questions at this point that they'd like to put to Mark on what we've heard so far? If you just pop them in the chat box. I think you touched on the long cycles, Mark.
Yes.
In terms of what that process takes, and we went into the CRM piece, and you just broke up slightly there. But I had made a note about the long cycles and what.
Yes.
How that affects things. But I think you're going to come on to some of our slides, I think, which we'll cover. There's no particular questions. Everyone's just basically saying yes, they can hear you fine. So yeah, we're good to crack on.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So hang on, let me see. Yeah, here we go. So I just wanted to talk through some of the advantages and disadvantages that in the discussions that I've had that we've been able to identify with this approach. Every silver lining has a cloud, as everybody knows. So some of the positives of taking this route are, first of all, you're adding management levers for steering the sales process. Yeah, traditionally the only lever you have is the sale being made or not, and everything apart from that, we don't really care. However, especially again, as I said, in long lead business-to-business processes, we need to care about that upstream process because it takes such a long time. We're also increasing predictability for downstream processes, yeah, such as manufacturing, operations, or even things like raw material ordering or manpower planning, yeah, workforce planning for a factory, yeah. Again, those things are not typically stuff that ramps up and down with a day's notice. It needs periods of time to plan. So having a better idea of what's coming down the road, and do that by leading indicators, you have a much better chance of being able to manage those things in a positive way. Yeah, you're also rewarding sales staff for actions that are increasing the pipeline. Yeah, by increasing that upfront leading indicator activity, eventually the number of sales should also increase if you have a consistent win ratio. You're creating focused coaching opportunities for sales management to their staff, and you're much better able to allocate final sales bonuses for collaborative efforts. And the example I will give there is one from my recent experience. Is, let's say, for example, we have somebody who's responsible for pump sales, and he's sitting in with the client and he's talking about pumps, and his client is going, we're good with pumps at the moment, but I'm having a real problem with my compressor. And my pumps guy doesn't really know very much about compressors, but as a company, we do compressors. Yeah. So what's his incentive to go get on the horn to the compressor guy and make that connection? Yeah. If we don't have a proper CRM system to capture these things, yeah, and I've literally heard this in a live example, is that my pumps guy goes, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about compressors, thank you, and have a good afternoon. Whereas what you're trying to get to is saying, I know a guy who can help you, let me get him on the phone, and you can talk to him right now. Yeah, and because you're capturing those processes in a system, yeah, at the end of the day, if there's a sale, a particular fraction of that sale can go to the person who brought in the lead according to the system that you've got. And thereby you're encouraging that collaboration and that cross-selling of everybody to cooperate in the sales process. Right. Not everything is the land of milk and honey. However, there are some negatives and things that might need to be addressed. And perhaps you've got some thoughts on your own. Yeah. One of the potential pitfalls, especially for senior management, yeah, is that salespeople seem to get a bonus even though there's no actual sale being made, and that can be a bit of a sticking point sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, and with the potential perception that your salespeople are just churning some of their data and thereby getting some of their bonus for the leading indicators, even though they never actually manage a sale. Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen, because by again having clean and up-to-date data, you are both exposing your sales personnel who have captive clients and are not working on a pipeline, and also sales managers who are not coaching their teams. It'll become really obvious by looking at the data that these things are happening. One other element that you will see from actual salespeople is that they have no time to do this administration. I should be out on the road selling. And again, it's a typical, yeah, your salesperson, yeah, typically likes being out on the road, likes being interactive, likes being out there talking to people, and their strength, generally speaking, is not in the administration part. That's fine. That's where their job. However, what they're going to argue for is an admin person to come and do that for them. Please don't let them get away with that. Yeah, it's part of their individual responsibility to update the system and to consult the system and to talk to each other. Yeah, both physically and through the system, so that you can get those collaborations going. And finally, you also end up in some cases with what we are in English colloquially known as jobs worths. Yeah, that's a translation, a word that doesn't really translate very well. But it's people who are considering that the data of my client is my data, and it's not something that I want to expose to the rest of the organization. And often, yeah, those are people that are potentially flight risks, yeah, that want to take their data and their client and bring it to a new employer. And again, by taking that data and making sure that it is in a system, it is preserved for your company as the employer of this person, rather than being the exclusive intellectual property of the salesperson themselves. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages I've been able to identify in previous discussions, but perhaps the team here can see some other ways of stimulating that, or even ways of overcoming some of the disadvantages that have been identified. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, sure. No, good points there. There's a couple of things coming in, Mark. Ali has asked a question. In closing the deal is important. Also, to have simplicity to the incentive philosophy is a must. However, what is your view on after sale and the delivery of certain project operationally and making sure to maintain within budget and profitable? Also, cash in bank. How to link this to the incentive?
Yes, absolutely. I have a practical example of that, again, from my own history, whereby a sale must have a minimum, at least theoretical, a profit margin on it. Yeah, based on the sales process, and the theoretical profit margin must be at least a minimum number for that sale to be credited to that salesperson for their sales bonus allocation. Yeah, again, it assumes to a certain degree that you've got your processes in place, and you know in your calculations of an offer, excuse me, that should be on silent. In the calculations of an offer, what the theoretical profit margin on this particular sale would be. And so your salesperson, yeah, is not encouraged to dive to the bottom, yeah, and race for the minimum sale process, but to make sure they're maintaining a minimum profit margin throughout their sales spectrum, so that they can qualify for that bonus.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
There's one more, Mark, from Phil. Phil's asking, activity-based elements of a bonus plan versus results.
Yes.
Results-based is a great discussion. I assume that the former will be a small part of the total business plan, as the results fund the plan.
Yes. No, absolutely. It's certainly not proposing that the sales bonus program goes 100% towards leading indicators. Yeah, but we take some of that, what would be a sales bonus for the actual sale, take it off the sale, and funnel that cost into the leading indicators process. Again, with the assumption that as a company, you have a sales system and you have a sales process, and you're encouraging your salespeople to work that process. And by working that process, that should crank that machine and generate more sales and more visibility of those sales and when they're coming and how they're coming to you.
Sure. Another one from Ian, Mark, at this point. We'll stay on this just for a second, because there's obviously relevant questions here. Ian's asked, poor senior managers often don't understand who delivered the early effort, which led to the sale, assigning bonus incorrectly throughout the team, which I think we spoke about off the live session, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So yes, and that's exactly the point. Yeah, and by making sure that some of this data is properly captured into a CRM system, yeah, you can go back to the history even 5 years later and say, now we've got a sale, yeah, and who has all worked contributed to this particular sale, because you have a system. And in many cases also, for example, you have field service personnel who are not salespeople and are very far away from a CRM process and system, yeah. But a field service personnel has initiated a discussion with a client that has led to an upsell or a cross-sell or a sell of a new and different product, yeah. And so you can even credit that person who is far away from the sales process and far away from the sales team, but that person can get an appropriate credit for contributing to a sale to that client. And by incentivizing that, you're turning your entire organization into a potential sales organization.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mark, and very collaborative.
Very much so. Very much so.
Massimo has asked, so the sale bonus can be a multiplicator of a bigger bonus scheme.
Yes, it's a component, yeah, for sure. And typically, people who are in a sales function, yeah, their balanced scorecard, shall we say, or their bonus calculation is largely determined by their sales, hitting their sales bonus their sales targets, and which is exactly as it should be. And as I was saying previously, the kind of people who are attracted to a sales career tend to be people who are motivated by getting sales, by getting bonuses, by winning bonuses and getting stimulated on those things. And therefore, by giving a sum of that bonus for upstream processes, for leading indicators, yeah, you'll get more motivation for people to be cooperating with those processes. And especially the data entry of that.
Yeah, sure. No, makes sense, Mark. I agree. Craig's asked, for companies of a certain size, a sale is typically secured by a team of commercial people, but perhaps led by a proposal director. For example, how do you share out any bonus in an equitable and fair manner?
Yes, that's a very good question, and every company will have its own solution to that, and sometimes they can be very complicated formulas. But I think that the important thing is to make sure that everybody that has done appropriate work on a proposal or on a sales process gets a piece of that pie. Yeah, and it may not necessarily even be a huge piece, but it needs to be proportional and appropriate for that particular sale and for how that particular sales team is structured. In some cases, for example, that sales bonus can be discussed as part of the work team setup process. That can be contentious, yeah. But that's something that every company needs to come to a conclusion on within its own organization, and what is their own history and what is fair and equitable within their own system and process. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule on that. There's probably some best practices around the place, but a lot of that will very much depend on the culture and the history within that particular company.
Yeah, agreed.
Having said that, by putting some of that bonus, as I said, into some of the leading indicators, which again you can get very good data on, yeah, you can thereby get a better justification and a more accurate calculation of who's contributed to what to which sale, and thereby allocate the bonus more fairly and more equitably.
Yeah, sure. No, good point, Mark. Graham's got one more question. Sales incentives should be linked to eventual profit, not only sales value. Structure views on how to set up the scheme.
Yeah, and again, I think we mentioned that earlier. Yeah, by making sure that there is a minimum floor of theoretical margin in any sale before it is qualified for a sales bonus. That will put a minimum requirement in and motivate your salespeople to make sure that you're getting at least some profit margin and not people selling your stuff at a loss just for the sake of getting a sale. That is not the way to make a profit as a company. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, so there's a component in the sales bonus to make sure that whatever you're selling has a minimum theoretical, the practical profit margin will come at the end of the day once the whole thing is produced and delivered and so on and so forth. And anything can happen in that process. Yeah, but at the point of sale, yeah, everyone has been part of that process, knows what the theoretical profit margin is of that sale based on the assumptions that have been put into that, hopefully reasonable. Yeah, hopefully that's answered the question.
Sure.
Get a lot of feedback from this particular process, unfortunately.
Yeah, we did say it might be a popular one.
Indeed. Shall we crack on?
Yes, good to go. Yeah,
I'm happy to keep talking.
No, a lot of thanks coming through, Mark. That's great. A lot of good feedback there. So if you want to press on to the next slide, we can come back to any other questions at the end.
Fantastic. Right. So what is next? And that is the question. Yeah. So now you have some actual data in the system, right? So now we need to monitor and improve the quality of that input. Yeah. Very important. Yeah. That these things are getting, once again, what you measure is what you get. If you're measuring it and you're looking at it and you're giving feedback to people who are inputting it, then you're going to get some improvement on that process. So you're using relevant reporting to steer the sales process and looking at bottlenecks. As I mentioned earlier, when I showed you the nice big graph, yeah, you can see in your process, oh, we've got no prospects, or we've got no presentations, yeah, and you can see where the bottlenecks are, where the sales process is breaking down, and then you can go and address where your bottlenecks are and go and fix them. Same with the actual sales team, so you can get that down to each individual person. You're looking at opportunities for coaching individual salespeople into whatever it is their strength or weakness are, and either work on their weaknesses, or in some cases you can pair somebody who is very strong in prospects together with someone who's very strong in closing, yeah, and make them a team so that together they're very strong in prospects and closing, and together they can get lots of sales. Yeah, and then finally, as I mentioned, also identifying and encouraging opportunities for cross-selling and upselling. And by being able to capture who's contributed what to a sales process, that can really help to encourage people to actually, yeah, make those connections and generate those discussions with clients. Yeah, so just to conclude, yeah, active sales pipeline is essential for any successful business. Yeah, by incentivizing the sales staff to update the CRM system, you're going to get reliable data, and by having reliable data, you can optimize the process and performance of the sales system. Yeah, you can identify the bottlenecks and the weakness of the system, of the staff, or the management, and then you can go ahead and address those things. Discussion time. Does anyone have any questions or discussions for the group, please? I think time-wise we're going okay. Yes, Mark?
Yeah, we are literally to the minute, so well done for perfect timing.
Thank you very much.
I will also, while we are doing this, guys, if you have any questions at all, you know, please pop them in the box now. I'm going to post a quick poll if you have a minute to answer. I'm just launching that now, which you guys should be able to see.
I can see it.
Can you see that okay, Mark?
Yes, I saw it fine, but I'm not able to vote, so I've clicked out of it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yep.
The transmission's not been great at my end today, guys, in terms of the Wi-Fi or the internet, it seems. So much appreciate. Hopefully you guys have picked everything up a lot clearer than I did. Thankfully, I knew most of that before we started, Mark, which has been helpful.
Yeah.
There are just a couple popping through. Yes, again, guys saying thanks for the feedback, Mark. It's been much appreciated. Stay safe from Ali. Duncan's asked. He said, "Hi, Mark. I like the idea and have used some elements of this in the past. Have you experience of running such a system and feedback from the same?"
Yes, we have experimented with that here we're in the Middle East over the past 12 to 18 months or so, just to see how this will work in practice. It does have some advantages. I've also spoken to one or two people who have used a similar system, especially in the financial industry, in the business banking sector. So it's not entirely a new idea, but many people I've spoken to, especially in oil and gas and engineering industry, this is not something that's being generally applied. So it's a fairly new concept in this part of the industry.
Yeah, that's great, Duncan. Just saying thanks, Mark.
Correct.
Phil's asking, have you any more thoughts on changing sales behaviours in a post-COVID environment?
Yes, I think that post-COVID, I mean, salespeople have always kind of been out on the road and out of sight to a certain degree, but the post-COVID environment will just make that a lot more, where people will be working more from home and out of sight, out of mind to a certain degree. And again, by being able to coach people and asking them to make sure that systems and data are updated, you get a much better idea of what sort of processes they're going through, that you're getting those leading indicators, that they're working the system, that they're working your sales process. And by the fact that your sales process works, or if it doesn't work, where it doesn't work, so you can address that. And so you can then make sure, so people who have traditionally been in a sales office may now just all be working from home. Yeah, that's a good thing, because that will save you office space, which will save you money as a company overall, if your system is still being managed properly along the way.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. Sorry, I'm just lagging slightly here at the moment.
Yes, I've lost you. You're gone. Your face has gone static, Mark. There you go. You're moving again.
It seems to be. I don't know if it's because I stay rural, but when it's went from glorious sunshine yesterday to rain today, it seems to have a bad effect on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the wires are wet. You get that.
Fraser's asking, do you have any sales tips for initial client meetings over a Zoom call and not face-to-face as is customary? I think that's a whole new topic.
that's a subject of a different webinar, I'm afraid. I don't have anything to contribute on that. I'm very sorry. But a very, very nice question.
I think it's very relevant, Fraser.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe one for another webinar we can dig into more more in depth. Graham's just sent a note to say, yeah, you know, sales from home are going to be a challenge, particularly for companies without a CRM system.
Yeah. But as I say, you know, you can manage a halfway decent CRM system on an Excel spreadsheet as long as everyone's diligent. Yeah, there's no a priori requirement to invest $1 million in buying Salesforce.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think we spoke about this, Mark, didn't we, in terms of the size of the CRM that's needed, depending on the company you're in and what you actually need it for. The main point is to have that data and manage it and use it properly.
That is correct.
It doesn't have to be a Salesforce, as we mentioned, that we've both got experience of. It can be done on spreadsheets, depending on the size.
You can put a shared spreadsheet on a Google Drive, and get everybody to update it. Bang, there's a CRM.
Yeah, it's just getting that collaborative and everybody. Yeah, everybody using it properly has got massive benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah. Graham said this will enhance closer leadership monitoring. He assumes, probably quite rightly.
Yes. Yeah. As I said, it comes down to as what Peter Drucker is saying, and what you measure is what you get. Yeah. If you're not measuring it, you're not going to get it. So measuring means that you're giving management attention to it. Yeah, that's what measurement means. Conversely, if you're measuring something, you better make sure it's something you want. Yeah, because if you're spending lots of effort and time measuring something that's useless to you, then you're just wasting a lot of effort and time, and that you could be using doing something more useful.
Definitely. Ian's something along those lines in terms of managing the sales pipeline is vital. However, his experience is that often the weak link due to management attitude, lack of positive control, or the use of the pipeline in the correct manner. Teamwork at all stages is the key, in his opinion. What are your views on management style needed for this process?
Yeah.
Our best practice, really.
I do have a view because I am a person with views. Management style, and one of the things I've done in the previous company is sort of our salespeople were reporting to the operations managers, and that doesn't really work very well. Yeah, because managing an operation is fundamentally different from managing a sales process, and not everybody has the talent or the capability to be able to deal with both effectively. So then we turned the salespeople into a regional sales team managed by a regional sales director. Yeah, and so the salespeople could be managed as salespeople, and then operations could be optimized by the operations people. And of course, the two should be working closely together. Yeah, but there's a certain amount of professional guidance that can be given from a sales director, to a salesperson that an operations manager is just not going to be able to help with. So that's one thing. And one other element that I've seen in the past is that salespeople tend to be heavy on the communication. Yeah. Comes with the territory, it's part of the job. Salespeople are about, it's all about communicating. And in some cases, operations people can sometimes be a little bit more direct, shall we say. Yeah, and so dealing with salespeople can often requires, more frequent, more detailed, and more cooperative communications with everybody. Yeah, and by doing that, you're building that relationship more closely and being able to manage that properly. As I say, once again, operations people tend to be a little bit more, here's a task, here's a target, and away we go. whereas salespeople is a little bit more, a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of give, a bit of take, because they're part of it. It's part of their negotiations, part of the commercial mindset that goes with that.
Yeah, no, that's appreciate that, Mark.
Yeah, my thoughts. Other
Yeah,
ideas
that's
maybe equally valid.
No, very welcome. Massimo has asked if we have time for one more question. Again, this might be for another day, but he said, you know, if we're ready as an industry to work remotely, which I agree with, we're all already working from home and remotely when the action starts again. Now the problem is that we are required to work in isolation. How will this impact the human relationship factor?
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, that's probably a whole new topic again, and I think, you know, a good question.
Yeah, it's very valid question, and I think I don't think anybody has any answers to that. I think everybody's still trying to figure that out. Yeah. Everybody's looking at the new reality, whatever that will turn out to be, and many companies and individuals and organizations and countries are experimenting with that. And you know, some of the best opinions that I've seen is that it's likely to be, you know, sort of a series of waves of restrictions followed by releases as countries and territories and regions go through second or third waves of COVID-19 infections. Yeah, that's the best analysis that I've been able to see. What reality will be, only the future will tell.
Sure. Just a couple of final questions, if I can bring them up quickly, Mark. Yeah. If I can get my cursor to work, because it's lagging. Just bear with me.
Yep. Far away.
Just a comment from Phil saying, you know, his experience is that activity-based goals get done because the individual can directly impact the outcome.
Yes.
Sometimes these are external factors outside the control of the salesman impacting revenue and profitability.
Yes. No, absolutely, and that's why I said, you know, sort of it's the theoretical profit margin at the time of sale that should be taken into account. Yeah, if 3 months later the price of steel goes up, yeah, and the cost of your raw material goes up, or the oil price collapses, and you end up with a price windfall, or any number of factors, or your factory drops the finished piece and it shatters and they have to start all over again. These things happen in reality, yeah? And you can't, you know, the salesperson has done their job, yeah? They've sold this piece of kit, yeah, at this particular profit margin, yeah, that everybody agreed on the day. And then it's up to operations and manufacturing to deliver based on those inputs. Yeah, and as you say, sometimes reality happens, and that's part of the risk and part of the management. You know, the art and science of management to try to make sure that those things doesn't happen and those are continuing to be under control.
Yeah, so true, Mark, and probably another webinar for me in a few weeks' time along those topics.
Great, look forward to it, Mark.
Right, guys. Hope you've enjoyed today. You found it worthwhile, Mark. Thank you very much for your time and your input. It's really appreciated. I hope everyone's found, you know, got something out of that and found it insightful as I have. As normal, there are one or two questions coming back in, Mark, that I can maybe follow up with the guys later. I'm conscious of time.
Yes, with pleasure. Yes, with pleasure.
Just coming up to the hour now, so.
Fantastic.
Thank you again, Mark, and we'll speak soon.
All right, take care. Have a good afternoon, morning, time of day, wherever you are, people. Thank you. Bye for now.